Horror is one of my favorite genres to read. It's also a tricky genre to find something that's really good and well written in. Then there's this book, which has been on my radar for at least a couple of years now, and it just keeps kind of getting pushed back. It keeps not being a major priority for me. And I've also never read anything from Stephen Graham Jones before. Now, after having read this book, I can definitely tell you I will be picking up more from Stephen Graham Jones. Today we're talking about The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones. And this is a book about 4 Native American men that all shared a specific event in their youth as they were younger on the reservation. Now we pick up with them years later in their life as they're all adults, and some of them have stayed on the reservation, some of them have moved on and left. Now, as they are adults, something seems to be after them, and it seems to be bent on revenge. What does this have to do with them, and what does this maybe have to do with something that happened to them when they were younger? And let me tell you, this book is wonderful. It's also difficult to sell because it is a slow burn. You will get one of the 4 men as an opener to the book before it shifts to another one of the characters, and then you will pretty much get their entire story start to finish before moving on from there. And it's really going to take its time. It's really going to settle in. It's going to really get comfortable with the character. It's going to really get comfortable inside the mind of the character. And it's going to kind of live there and keep that tension and suspense just dialed and ratcheted up and really keep you living in this zone. But it's not in any hurry to get on to the next section of the story. Now, that's not to say that this is a slow or long or drawn out story. It is quite a short book. It is quite a quick read. I'm just saying it's not necessarily action-packed, fast-paced. It's much more of a character piece and really just living inside of the mood, the atmosphere, the tension, the suspense of this book. And every time it moves to a new character in order to focus on them and their situation and what's happening with them and how they're experiencing the world now and back then, because we will be constantly getting blips of what's happening right now and what happened to them when they were younger. And every time we move forward in the story, we're going to get a little bit more, a little bit deeper, and a little bit more understanding, both of the present and of the past. And this book has a real overall, almost Stephen King feeling and vibe to the way the story is told and the way it's written, although I would argue maybe just a slight bit more casual in the way that it's written, the language and the way it's told. I don't know if that's typical of Stephen Graham Jones. I don't know if that's how he writes all of his books, or if that's just how this particular book is written, or even maybe that's just how I perceived the book. But that's kind of the vibe that I got as I was going through it. And like I said, this book is difficult to sell because it's a little bit slower paced, slow burn, stuff like that. And I don't want to oversell it because I did say that this book is great and I genuinely loved it. But I kind of want to reference back to that. I did a video last week where I said horror is best. It was like a hot takes video where I said horror is best when it's not scary. And this book was the inspiration for that hot take because it's not fast-paced, it's not bombastic, it's not in your face, there's not a lot of action and gore, it's just this mood, it's the atmosphere. You're living with the characters inside of their minds. There is a specific character that as you're going through his whole section, he feels like he's going insane as you're reading it and you're slowly watching this happen, and it's such a build-up and a development, and it's really that tension, that atmosphere, that slow, eerie build. And there is such a punch and a payoff to each section at the end of it, but the punch and the payoff is extremely short in comparison to the slow, tense build. And I will say the ending to the first section, not the opening prologue, but like the first section where we actually live with the character for a good chunk of time, had me floored. That was the greatest ending. That was probably my favorite section of the entire book. But that particular ending to that section, holy shit. Let's just say that. And once again, it's not overly gory. It's not overly long. It's really quick and punchy. But after that buildup and just the utter unraveling of the character, it was great. That was holy crap is all I have to say about that. Some great stuff. And then there's just the character writing in general, which is just exceptionally good character writing. And all of our characters are varying levels of gray. And it's not like this overly aggressive way of writing gray characters. So, oh, they're gray and morally ambiguous, and we want you to know that they're morally gray characters. No, not really. They just feel like really real people with real flaws that just none of them are necessarily great people, but none of them are really bad people. Like I said, just varying levels of gray. Some are more relatable than others, but they just, at the end of the day, they feel like really real people that you could just run into out there in your everyday to day life. And nothing is exaggerated, nothing is overblown, and nothing is overwritten. And by the end of it, you feel pretty bad for some of these characters, not because of what's happening to them on the horror aspect of it, but just because of kind of who they are and what has happened to them and what their life is in general, and then what's happening to them. It's really good, straight down the middle character writing. And then there's the overall themes and commentary and just the story that he's trying to tell. And I know very little about Native American lives and traditions and values and all of that. So I can't really speak to what he's trying to say on that aspect of it with the whole born and raised on the reservation and the traditions of the reservations and the traditions of the Native American people, etc. But there's this overall feeling of tradition and violating that tradition. What happens if you violate that tradition? What happens if you run away from it? What happens if you run back to it? What happens if you stay there on the reservation and you let it stagnate? And then when it comes to that tradition, every one of the main four characters that we are following has a different relationship to it and with it. And as much as I don't know the nuances about Native American traditions and what he's trying to say when it comes to that in particular, he's telling the story in broad enough strokes that it really can apply to just about anyone in any situation from any background, because he's not making it so hyper-specific to be just his culture or just relevant to his culture. It's really fascinating that he's able to do it in a way that kind of becomes universal, just too human as a part of the entire human experience. And then there's this entire added layer of nature and our relationship to nature. And then there are promises, and those promises are made. Some are kept, some are broken. And then what are the consequences of those broken promises? And how do those consequences come back to us and reflect on us, etc., etc. It's a whole lot deeper than you kind of give it credit for at first glance. And then it's the kind of book that you could glance over it right off the top of it, kind of read a surface level reading. And even if you do a surface level reading, you might catch yourself thinking back on it after you've done and just think a little bit more here, and kind of things kind of change and you read more into it or maybe get more out of it. The longer you sit with it, the longer you reflect on it, the longer you think about it. It's kind of a book that gets better the longer or the further away from it that you get. Although I will continue to reiterate that this book might not be for everyone when it comes to scary stories, simply because I know some people are looking for the much more in-your-face, dialed-up scares than this is going to deliver. And it's just much more in the mood, the atmosphere, the vibe, and then the story that it's trying to tell and the themes that it's trying to push, etc. Although at the end of the day, I think that it is just really good storytelling. And I'm going to give it an 8.5. And as always, everybody, the link for my Patreon's in the description below. The link for my Discord's in the description below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.